Who wears the pants? When a new couple announce their partnership, that's one of the first questions on everybody's lips. Are they compatible? Yeah, I see it. Nah, I really don't. Followed very often by, she most definitely wears the pants in that relationship. Now, it's not a negative thing, it's just who we, the gossips, perceive to hold all the power. Sometimes I hate history. Yes, I chose the knickers, but that's because I'm about to introduce you to a brand new character, and despite the times in which she lived, she most definitely wore the pants. Even her rivals, they trembled at the thought of what she was capable of. Her name was Margaret of Anjou. She was the wife of England's King Henry VI. Luckily for me, I only have to wear these for today, but he had them on his entire married life. She was everything he wasn't: powerful, decisive, ambitious, and French. Now, she'd made the mistake of not being on the scene 4 years earlier in 1455 at the First Battle of St Albans. But here, at Blore Heath in 1459, 4 years later, she was not going to make the same mistake again. It had by no means been a peaceful 4 years. The Yorkists and Lancastrians had still been bickering and there was still no love lost between them. Margaret, however, was fed up with the Yorkist influence over her husband, the king. He'd been suffering with severe mental health issues and was not able to stand up for himself. But by 1459, he was on the mend and Margaret was ready. So she called the Lancastrians to arms and they started mustering their forces across the country. Fearing the worst, the Yorkists did the same and they agreed to a rendezvous at Ludlow. Often we disconnect from our history because the past feels so far away. But when you stand or sit exactly where it happened, you are as close as you can possibly get. Yes, your 10,000 steps can take you somewhere, well, just as glamorous as this. In this English field of maize, it is said the soil was soaked with so much Lancastrian blood, the stream ran red for 3 days. And this was all over the right to babysit some overly sensitive, pious monarch. Now that's a story I want to tell. The Yorkist opposition was made up of the family of 3 Richards, mentioned in the first episode, or Dicks for short. Daddy Richard, the Earl of Salisbury, had been gathering his army in the north at Middleham Castle and was marching them south to Ludlow for the rendezvous. However, it was here at Blore Heath where his army was blocked. It is said they reached a hedge just like this one, where he spotted an army of Lancastrian banners on the other side. I imagine Salisbury breathed a sigh of relief when he realised that it wasn't the French powerhouse of Margaret. Instead, he'd run into the army of Baron Audley. With sweat trickling down his neck, he knew Margaret was close by. I mean, he could smell the garlic. If Margaret's army had a chance to meet up with Audley's, then Salisbury wouldn't stand a chance. He had to stand and fight. No one really knows how much Salisbury knew about Audley's force and their position, but he did have enough time to plan his attack. We know this because he positioned his men on the top of a hill with a wood behind him and a stream at the bottom. A perfect defensive position. Audley lined up his men at the bottom of the hill facing the Yorkist forces. As the armies prepare for battle, archers from both sides use each other as target practice. It is quickly becoming a race against time for Salisbury. The longer he delays, the more likely Margaret will arrive. He desperately needs Audley to attack. Salisbury goes for the oldest trick in the book. He orders an organised retreat in his centre back towards the tree line. So, we have the Yorkists and we have the Lancastrians. Audley's men see the Yorkists retreating into the trees, and it is believed that without orders, 500 of his mounted men launch across the stream and up the hill towards the Yorkists in pursuit. Audley's men would have charged up this hill on their horses, across this fence and into the field beyond to reach the Yorkist line. Men on horseback were the wealthiest of any army, and to put it in context, they were not riding the equivalent of a Toyota Yaris. They were riding something only deep pockets could buy. This charge is just what Salisbury wanted. His archers, they simply turn around and rain arrows down on the approaching enemy who don't even reach the Yorkist line. But Audley, seeing his men being torn apart by an arrow storm, spurs his horse onwards and leads an even greater charge across the stream and up the hill towards the Yorkist line. When I think it's fair to say that this did not quite go according to plan. Whether it was a valiant attempt to try and rescue the men that were still alive, or just to try and overrun the Yorkist front line, the result remains the same. Audley is cut down in the fighting and the Lancastrians flee the field. This cross, right here, in a corner of some remote English field that nobody can see, marks the exact spot where Audley was killed. Over 500 years ago, he fell right there. Nobody knows it's here. Seeing their commander fall, the Lancastrian rearguard launch an infantry assault up the hill, but this also goes disastrously wrong. The Lancastrians, many of which actually switch sides and start cutting down their comrades. But for Audley, they must have got to his body, because after the battle, it was taken to Derby and interred at Darley Abbey. Now, no one knows where his final resting place is anymore, because the abbey no longer stands. So this is it. This is all that's left of Baron Audley. So, to get a sense of what it's like to do 10,000 steps in battle dress, I thought I'd put on my mail, my sword, my shield, my helm, and now it's time to charge. For Salisbury! I think I know why Daddy Dick won such a great victory. You may be thinking that Salisbury is now ready to have it out with Margaret, but the truth is, he still doesn't know where she is. She was in fact watching the battle from the top of a church steeple further off. He still feels in such danger that he abandons his cannons on the field and flees to Ludlow as quickly as possible. He pays a friar to keep firing his cannons while he retreats, as to confuse any of the Lancastrians still in the vicinity. Clearly, Henry was not the only man living in Margaret's shadow.